6 armed guards were standing in my driveway the day I came home, rifles slung across their chests, boots planted in the red dirt, and somehow I was the one they said was trespassing. The lead guy lifted his hand for me to stop, leaned toward my window and said, "You're on Cedar Ridge Estates, HOA property. I'm going to need you to turn this truck around," while I stared past him at my own rusted gate and the busted mailbox with my name painted on it. In that second, it hit me that if somebody with a clipboard and a nice logo decides your home isn't yours anymore, you might be 3 sentences away from losing everything you worked for. You know what I mean. My name's Mark Daniels. For 15 years, I drove a semi back and forth across the country, sleeping in truck stops and cheap motels, missing birthdays and holidays, so I could stack enough overtime to buy one thing I could point at and say, "That's mine." That one thing was a beat-up 200-acre ranch outside a little Texas town called Redstone, scrub oak, broken fences as a leaning farmhouse, and a sky that made all the long nights feel worth it. I parked a silver Airstream under the only decent oak, slapped some solar panels on a frame, wired up a cranky generator, and told myself I'd fix the house up board by board, and finally have a quiet place to grow old. My marriage didn't survive my hours on the road. Too many miles, too many arguments. You know how it goes. When the divorce finally hit, I sold the city house, signed a stack of papers in Dallas, and told myself at least I still had the land and the trailer. I spent 3 weeks in town, finishing that mess, selling equipment, closing storage units, sitting in lawyers' offices, and the whole drive back I kept picturing bumping down my dirt road, smelling cedar and diesel, hearing my generator hum. Instead, I came over to the last hill and saw a navy blue checkpoint slapped across my driveway. Metal barriers, a little guard shack, and 6 guys in tactical vests pacing my fence line like they owned it. I rolled up Slowheart, doing double time. The big guy patch on his chest that said Jenkins walked up to my open window. Behind him, a wiry guard with Valdez on his vest stood just far enough back to make his rifle obvious. "State your business," Jenkins said, like we were at some federal facility. "Business?" I laughed, because sometimes that's all you can do. I live here. This is my ranch. Jenkins checked a clipboard, like my entire life had been printed in bullet points. "This parcel has been placed under temporary management by Cedar Ridge Estates Homeowners Association due to abandonment," he said. "You're required to vacate HOA property." I pointed straight at my Airstream parked under the oak tree solar panels, right where I left them. "Does that look abandoned to you?" I asked. "I've been living there since March. I went to Dallas for 3 weeks to finish a divorce, that's it." Valdez stepped up, voice a little tighter. "Under updated bylaws, any unoccupied property for more than 21 days qualifies as abandonment. HOA has assumed jurisdiction. You can contest it through proper channels, but you can't be here today." Under the fear and the shock, there was this deep, familiar anger. The same feeling I had as a kid, when some bigger guy pushed me into a locker and the teacher looked the other way. "I own this land free and clear," I said. "I've got the deed, the title, everything." Jenkins didn't blink. He pulled a thick envelope from a pouch on his vest and held it out. "You are legally required to accept this notice. Failure to comply will result in additional penalties. When 6 rifles are in your peripheral vision, you take the envelope." I backed out to the county road parked on the shoulder and ripped it open. Fancy letterhead. Cedar Ridge Estates. Homeowners Association in gold. Script big red notice of temporary management and suspension of owner access splashed across the top. Page after page of legal-sounding phrases, abandonment provisions, environmental hazard concerns, community standards. At the bottom was the signature that made my stomach drop: Victoria Hale, HOA president. Last time I'd seen Victoria, she'd been the polished real estate agent who showed me the property and brought cookies when I moved in, talking about how excited we are someone's finally investing out here. She never said, "By the way, if you leave town for 3 weeks, I'll hire armed guards to claim your land." Afraid or not, I wasn't just going to drive away from my own name on a mailbox. I headed straight to the Cedar Ridge Community Center, where the HOA office sits. Inside looked more like a law firm than a neighborhood association. Marble floor, leather chairs, awards on the wall. Victoria sat behind a huge desk, glasses low on her nose, hair in that tight bun people wear when they want you to know they're in charge. She smiled like nothing was wrong. "Mark, I've been expecting you," she said. "I just got turned away from my own driveway," I said. "Yeah, here I am." She opened a folder thick with paper. "Your property has been in violation of Section 143.7 of our updated covenants," she said. "Under our abandonment and environmental risk provisions, the association is required to assume temporary management to protect community safety and property values." I pulled my worn copy of the original covenants from my jacket. "There's no 143.7 in here," I said, tapping the page. "And my ranch isn't even inside your subdivision. It's zoned agricultural. I checked that before I bought it." She gave me this patient smile, the kind that says, "You poor, confused man." "Community standards evolve," she said. "The board passed amendments last month. They're documented in our minutes, but those are internal records for members in good standing." "And when did you become president?" I asked. "Because when I moved in, that was Martha Green." Her eyes flickered just a little. "Martha stepped down due to health concerns. The board voted me in unanimously," she said. She slid a temporary management order across the desk. Nice paper-heavy ink, a whole lot of talk about jurisdictional expansion. At the bottom were board signatures, including one name that hit me hard: Harold Price, treasurer. Harold was the older guy who'd stood by the grill at a neighborhood BBQ talking about chemo, joking that he just wanted one more summer. "This says Harold signed on May 20th, I said. "That's correct," she answered. I pulled out my phone, opened a screenshot of the local obituary page, and turned it toward her. "Harold died April 10th, I said quietly. "I was at his funeral." The blood drained from her face. Then she snapped that door shut and let the ice show. "You are not in a position to question board procedure," she said. "If you think there's been an error, pursue it through legal channels. As of right now, Cedar Ridge HOA has control of that parcel, and our security team will enforce it. This meeting is over." She walked to the door and held it open for me, like I was a vacuum salesman. So I went to those legal channels she was so confident about. The Redstone County Records Office isn't glamorous, but it has the one thing she didn't: the official version of the truth. Patricia at the front desk pulled up the original Cedar Ridge covenant and plat map. The covenant on file hadn't changed in years. It covered residential lots, 1 through 144, inside a clearly drawn subdivision. My ranch parcel 312B sat outside that line, zoned agricultural, bought from the state. No amendments, no expanded jurisdiction, no section 143.7. While she printed copies, I noticed a black SUV idling across the street windows. Two dark driver talking into a radio while staring at the door. As I stepped out, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Walk away, Mark. Or this gets worse than paper." Yeah, that happened. Fear is one thing. Feeling played is another. I filed a complaint with the state about Cedar Ridge Security Services, attached photos of the guards and rifles, sent copies of the forged-looking documents, and Harold's impossible signature to the county, and dumped every file into a folder on my laptop, labeled, "They Think I Won't Fight." That folder is why my phone rang a few days later, and I heard Mr. Daniels. "This is Investigator Rachel Cortez with the Texas Attorney General's office. I've reviewed your documents. You're not the first person this has happened to. Rachel told me about other places, different towns, different HOAs, where owners suddenly found their property abandoned or hazardous, blocked from access, then quietly approached by a company called Orion Resource Group with quick cash offers. Same forged minutes, same fake emergency language, same state security contractors. Here's the deal," she said. "If you're willing to stand your ground, we'll bring in a real environmental firm under state authority. They test your land and water. If it's clean, their emergency story collapses. Then we walk into court with science instead of just outrage. But you need to know once they realize you're not folding, they're going to push harder." I thought about those guards, about Harold's name on that paper. "I'm tired of being the guy people expect to roll over," I said. "So yeah, let's do it." A week later, real trucks with state plates rolled down my dirt road. No sneaking this time. Scientists in vests and hard hats took soil from around the old barn. Water from my well and the creek air readings near the house. Their lead, Jenna, waved me over around noon, holding a tablet. "Good news," she said, "there's no contamination at all. In fact, your well is so clean, it almost certainly means you're sitting on a major aquifer. Big one." And right then, the twist really landed. Nobody spends this much effort and lawyer money on a broken-down farmhouse. But fresh water in Texas, deep and clean and cheap, if you can steal it. That'll make people very creative. Rachel's team dug up emails, contracts, bank records. Turned out Victoria hadn't cooked this scheme up on her own. There were consulting agreements with Orion community improvement proposals that always ended with Orion getting control of land and water rights. My abandoned ranch was just one square in a much bigger game. When we finally sat in a small courtroom in Redstone, it wasn't some big TV drama. It was just me in a clean shirt, Victoria in a suit that didn't quite fit right anymore, Rachel with binders, Jenna with charts, and Judge Park with the power to say whose name actually mattered on that deed. Patricia testified first and walked the judge through the original covenant and plat map. Jenna explained that my land was clean, no hazards, absolutely no reason for an emergency seizure. Rachel played a recording of Victoria on the phone with an online legal form company, asking how fast they could produce official-looking HOA documents and whether they could match signatures. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I read what I signed, Your Honor. I checked my boundaries before I bought. I did it right. They decided their paper and their buddies gave them more claim to my land than I did. Judge Park looked at the stack of evidence for a long moment, then finally said the words. I'd been holding my breath, for Cedar Ridge had no jurisdiction over my ranch. Their notices were invalid. Any attempt by Victoria the HOA or any agents thereof to control or restrict my property was prohibited, and the forgery evidence sent straight upstairs for criminal charges. You'd think that'd be the end. Little guy wins, credits roll right. The next morning, a shiny black sedan pulled up to my gate, and a man stepped out, who made Victoria look like a warm-up act. Perfect suit, perfect watch, the kind of guy who has someone else pump his gas. Mr. Daniels, he said. Staying on the county road side of the fence, I'm Colin Mercer, with Orion Resource Group. I think we can help each other. He didn't waste time. You've been dragged through a lot of unnecessary drama by our former local partner. He said we'd like to resolve this in a way that benefits everyone. Orion is prepared to purchase your property for 3 times its current assessed value. All cash. 48-hour closing. No inspections. You walk away with enough money to start fresh anywhere you want, and this entire headache disappears. He said it like he was offering to take an old couch off my hands, not my entire life. Why would you pay that much for a broken-down ranch you've never lived on? I asked, unless you already know exactly what's under it. He smiled, but his eyes stayed flat. We're assembling a larger agricultural project. Your parcel is strategically important. That's all. No conspiracy here, Mark. I thought about Jenna's aquifer report about the other owners Rachel had talked about, who got pressured until they signed. If this is just agriculture, you wouldn't need fake HOA paperwork and guys with rifles blocking my driveway, I said. His smile slipped a little. You're letting your emotions cloud a very generous opportunity. He said rural properties are fragile. Storms, fires. Vandalism, sometimes even insurance can't make you whole. I'm trying to save you from learning that the hard way. You don't have to be a genius to translate that nice ranch shame if something happened to it. I won't lie after he left. I sat at my tiny table in the trailer and did the math. 3 times assessed value was more money than I'd ever had. I could have walked away, told myself it was just business started over somewhere. Nobody knew my name. But every time I pictured signing those papers, I also saw Jenkins telling me I was trespassing on my own land, and something in me just locked up. I called Rachel and told her about Colin's visit. She wasn't shocked. If you take it, they get what they wanted, and the pattern continues. She said if you don't, they're going to push, but every dirty trick they pull makes it easier to show a jury who they are. It's your call. Things did get rough. My solar line got cut one night with a blade so clean it had to be a pro. My well pump mysteriously filled with grit that looked a whole lot like cement dust. The real HOA president, Martha, the one who never actually resigned, had her house broken into while she was away. Stay out of it, sprayed across her bedroom wall. Colin never texted or called, but his message showed up in every broken thing. We didn't back off. Jenna's team finished the full survey and confirmed what we suspected. I was sitting on one of the biggest freshwater sources in the county. Rachel's case grew from one angry rancher to a full-on investigation into Orion's schemes in 3 different states. Emails turned up where executives joked about spooking yokels with environmental letterhead and bragged about how cheap they were getting panicked properties. By the time Colin and Victoria stood in a federal courtroom months later, it wasn't just my story anymore. It was a pattern laid out in black and white. They both took plea deals once the evidence went up on the screens. Victoria got years for fraud and conspiracy plus restitution to the people she helped hurt. Colin got even more time for racketeering and running a criminal enterprise behind a respectable logo. They walked out in cuffs instead of SUVs. On paper, that's a happy ending. My ranch is safe now. My name is solid on that deed. I'm working with real agencies to make sure that water gets used in a way that helps the community instead of vanishing into some offshore account. But I'd be lying if I said it felt completely finished. Guys like Colin don't all end up in courtrooms. Some of them just watch a case like mine and say, "Next time we'll be quieter." So I'm telling you this, like I'd tell a buddy at a diner counter. Coffee going cold. Not because I think I'm some hero, but because this whole mess started with something boring. A letter on nice paper, some made-up section number, and a woman in a blazer saying, "These are the rules now." If you've ever had a boss, a landlord, an HOA, anyone with a little bit of power twist the rules until you felt crazy. You know how fast policy can turn into a weapon. I'm honestly curious what you'd do in my shoes. Would you have taken the money and walked, told yourself it's just business and slept fine? Or would you have dug your heels in and risked everything to keep the one piece of ground that finally felt like yours, just to prove they couldn't scare you off your own driveway? You know what I mean? Let me know in the comments. Tell me if you've seen anything like this where you live or work, because the more real stories get told, the harder it is for people like that to hide behind their letterhead and policies and act like this is just how the world works.